Welcome back, everybody, to That's DPI. I am Zach, and that is Tyler over there. And this is our final episode of season 1. We want to thank you guys for all of the tremendous support that we've received from you this first season. You know, we're nearing 500 subscribers. We just had our most successful video yet, which was that historic Super Bowl ref call. So we can't thank you guys enough for tuning in every week for some ref calls. And we're so excited to bring you guys season 2 here pretty soon. But this is our finale, and we'll be taking a 2-week hiatus before resuming our off-season coverage. Tyler, any words for the fans for the finale?
Y'all are funny. In the comment sections, y'all are funny. We read the comments. We enjoy most of them.
We do, and I enjoy all of the ones that call Tyler out on small language idiosyncrasies. It's a regional dialect, guys. Regional dialect.
I apologize for calling them the Jaguars. I've been informed.
We can't forget about Matt Hasselback, right?
Yeah, we're from the Midwest, all right? We tend to put A's when we should put E's.
Right. That's just something that you guys are going to have to get used to as we get more popular. You know, sometimes we say things in a Midwestern tone, but we appreciate the comments nonetheless. Keep sending them our way. We laugh at them every time. And we have some ref calls for you this week. We also have a discussion surrounding the quarterbacks and, you know, their careers following the Super Bowl. Obviously, Sam Darnold won it. Drake Maye lost it. What is ahead for those two guys? We're going to discuss and debate that. And then we also have some Super Bowl ref calls, which are coming right up. It wasn't as entertaining of a game as probably anybody wanted, except maybe Seattle fans. But even them, no touchdowns in the first half. This is one of the plays that led to the touchdownless first half. It's Cooper Kupp trying to reel in a tough catch, and, you know, this pause kind of shows you that he was having some trouble, right? So right before the second half, Cooper Kupp was trying to make this catch. It was initially ruled a completion, right?
I believe so.
And then overturned to be a incompletion. So we'll see Cooper Kupp here try to reel this ball in.
So we do see him lose it. It's not yet on the ground. That's what's important to know. Yes, they did. So as you see, it was a review that it did hit the ground. And Zach, you and I actually had some live disagreements about this. You originally disagreed with this call. Do you kind of want to state your case first?
Yeah, I'll go ahead with my case. I do think that I still think this is a catch, albeit it's close. But the reason we wanted to highlight this call, because at the end of the day, it wasn't super impactful. I think it's important to understand the rules of the catch relating to a play like this, you know, where a player's just securing as it goes to the ground. So the reason I think that this is a catch is because when the ball touches the ground, which is here, it appears that he has full control of it. The ball doesn't move. He keeps both hands on it. It doesn't jar free of his control, and then he lifts it up off the ground with his fingers and then loses control. So, and then, of course, he would regain control after that. They don't show the whole play. But since he was in control for the brief nanosecond it was touching the ground, then lost control afterwards, I think that this is a catch. It reminds me of that Colby Parkinson play that was so weird, Lions and Rams, where the ref said that he regained control in the end zone and it's a touchdown, whatever. This one is more obvious because we can see the ball. I think that he had control when it was touching the ground. So you can rule the catch. That's what the NFL did in that play, right?
Yeah, my thing is I don't think that he has control. I think I see what you're talking about where it doesn't move, but I think that the ground stops it from continuing to move. And with just him having his fingertips on it like that, I don't think that's enough to say he's got full control of the ball, especially since he does lose possession. Which you can have control and then lose possession. But with him just having it on his fingertips, quite literally on his fingertips, I can't rule this as possession yet.
Interesting. So you're saying that since the fingertip grab didn't allow for control and it touched the ball without him having control, it's an incomplete pass. That's your argument.
Yes.
Okay, and that makes sense. You know, I couldn't argue with the refs if that's what their ruling was, because we've seen it happen before, right? We have absolutely seen it happen. I mean, look at the Isaiah Likely call. You know, they really didn't have control when the defender knocked it out. This is even less control than Likely had, and so it hits the ground without control. Fair, but I just think that it's really tough because it does look like he actually corrals it here, and like he stops the ball from moving. The ground doesn't stop it because the ground so barely grazes it. It doesn't stop its movement, but then the ball does come free here, like totally of his hands. So
My only thing though is I know the rule states that it can touch the ground as long as you have full control. That's what your argument is. However, I've personally never seen a ball touch the ground and it get ruled incomplete unless the ruling is like it was control and like the ground jarred it loose type of thing.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting. Had the ball moved, like had the ground jarred it free from his fingertips, no question, right? But it's the fact that he kind of remains in control of it until after the ball is no longer on the ground that leads me. But I don't hate them overturning this one. I don't think it's, you know, egregious in any way. The NFL catch rules are so confusing and often contradictory that this is one of those instances where you could rule either way and it wouldn't actually be wrong necessarily, right? There can be disagreement, but it's certainly not egregious, right?
Sure. And a catch or no catch that really didn't impact, I mean, it didn't impact the game. Seattle won anyway. If that's the most controversial call, I think it's a good crew. Unfortunately, there is another call that we have to break down.
Yeah, this one is interesting because we've seen this happen before, right? And I'll give you 3 guesses as to which team we've seen this situation affect this season. 3 guesses.
So first off, what we're seeing here is you're going to see the Seattle defender right here just get into it with Stefan Diggs and see if it shows the smack.
Yeah, we do want to see that.
There it is.
Closed fist too, huh?
So I thought it was closed fist, but I think there's an alternate angle that actually does show that it's kind of more of like this, which was more open fist, weirdly enough.
And what's crazy is the ref is getting made contact with.
Yeah. So we see Diggs grab the face mask. We see a retaliation. We see a hit somewhere, and the ref is all right there.
All right, so clearly a pretty big scuffle. But I think the key thing here is no flags were thrown on this punches thrown scuffle, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And whether open fist or closed fist, that is important for ejections. We've discussed that this year. But throwing anything is typically at least a flag, right?
Yeah, and it's one thing if it's like so far away and the ref just kind of missed it. The ref's right there.
Yeah.
I don't know how you don't see. Even the ref is even in the middle trying to break up the face mask. Now you can argue whether Diggs is justified or not, but there still should be a flag thrown on someone there.
Right, because you can't
Nothing.
throw. Yeah, it's not like it's just hand fighting or pushing and shoving. When you get thrown punches, you get thrown flags. It's a pretty standard rule. And so what I was alluding to earlier is because there was no flags thrown, they can't issue any flags after the fact. They can't issue any ejections on replay, nothing. The New York can't step in and say, Stephon Diggs should be ejected, or Jackson Jobe, here the corner here, or Boye Mafe should be ejected for their role in this scuffle because there was no flag thrown. New York can't step in. Is that correct?
Correct. And we actually saw this with DK Metcalf earlier this year.
That's what I was alluding to.
Yes, they asked when DK Metcalf punched a fan, they asked the replay analysis person on the coverage there. They're like, could they have thrown a flag or could they have ejected him? And they very clearly stated they could have thrown a flag if they're watching the sideline. But because they didn't see it, New York cannot step in. They can take disciplinary action afterwards, but they cannot step in the game and say, hey, you have to throw a flag or you have to throw Metcalf out of there. Same thing here with Seattle, with both Seattle defenders and Diggs. They cannot create a flag or an ejection when there was not one thrown.
Sure. And they certainly did take action afterwards. And I'm sure these players will be fined by the NFL because they love to collect their money. Of course, DK Metcalf was suspended for 2 games for his altercation with a fan. This is probably not a suspendable offense because, like we saw, open hand, no suspension.
Correct. And even if it was closed fist, which is a wild thing that like I'd never heard of the open fist versus closed fist concept until week 1 this year. Of this season, but nonetheless, we have it now. I still don't think it's an ejectable, or excuse me, I still don't think it's a suspendable offense.
Right. It just would have been ejectable in the game, but not suspendable after the fact.
Correct. Yes, I do believe that. If you want to rule that as closed fist, certainly ejectable. I don't think there's enough for it to be a suspension, personally. If it was like week 12, it's like, he's going to miss week 13, different story. It's another to say, this is the last game of the year, and in 5 months, he's going to miss a game for that.
Gotcha. And I tend to agree, right? I would have been upset if they suspended, the player for this. But speaking of last game of the season, last ref call of the season, we kind of wanted to grade this officiating crew in the ultimate ref test of the year, right? You don't want a Super Bowl defining call. And then I think we should also grade the officials on how they did across the entire season. Just assign 2 grades here, because recently in an interview, Roger Goodell said that the refs are so good, they're actually better than they have ever been. And I think that this is just Roger Goodell playing politics, but I disagree with that assessment, especially because the NFL is taking action regarding reviewable play calls. We had not covered this yet, but the NFL is making unsportsmanlike conduct like roughing the passer or face mask reviewable next year, indicating that their actions may be different from Roger Goodell's words in regards to the referees. But let's start with our grade of Sean Smith's crew here in Super Bowl 60. Tyler, go ahead.
I'm gonna go with a B- overall. And a lot of that negativity around his crew is that fight that we just covered there. No flag was thrown on that. The ref's right there. At the very least, you could call a face mask penalty, and nothing was thrown. I think that in a game where tensions are high, I mean, these athletes have worked their entire lives to play in this game. Tensions are very high. Testosterone's running rampant. You've got to make a statement saying this type of behavior is not acceptable, because the worst thing that could happen is a brawl happens later, and that would be such a horrible look on both the crew and the NFL as a whole on the world stage. You've got to make those calls, and I think the fact that they didn't is a very negative thing. Outside of that, though, I really liked the crew. I really liked the calls. I think they let them play. I don't think it was one-sided by any means. So I certainly put it like above a C for that, but I think not throwing any flag on that fight call brings it down to a B- minus.
Gotcha. So the teacher handing out his grades for this officiating crew. And, I agreed with your analysis, but I disagree with your grade. I'm actually going to give them a B+ because my issues were reduced to 1 or 2 plays that weren't actually impactful. I would rather the refs not call flags than call them. And that's exactly what this crew did for the Super Bowl. There were so little yellow laundry on the field that we got to enjoy the players, enjoy the coaching moments, enjoy the strategy of the 2 defenses. I didn't find myself thinking about the refs once in this game, or except for this play, right? Even with the catch, I was like, you know what? That's what they rule, and it was the booth anyway. And that should be the goal of a refereeing crew. It isn't always, but the refs being out of my frame of mind, especially as someone who, is on a podcast that covers the referees, who's maybe hyper analyzing for the refs, I think that proves they did an excellent job. So I'm giving them a B plus, only because I do agree with your analysis that they probably should prevent hand swinging brawls in the Super Bowl. But everything else, and then I'm digging them a little bit for that holding call that cost Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker his 50-yard touchdown, because I think it was a little soft. But still holding, still fine, B plus all around. The rest did a great job. But
we're still in that B range, though.
Yeah,
in a standard 4.0 grading system, we've given them the same grade.
Yeah, well, we've given them 3.0, exactly. But I wanted to extend this to the entire season, because obviously the Super Bowl is just one tiny blip for the entirety of officiating here in the NFL. And I want to read Roger Goodell's comments as they were written. He defended the league officiating as, quote, incredible and better than ever in an interview prior to the Super Bowl. I don't think it's ever been better in the league, and noted that officials are held to an incredibly high standard. I disagree with both of these counts, and I see the look on your face, and it shows that you do too. What is making you make that stank face right now that you've got going on?
So I have to play a little devil's advocate here. When we look at officials from like today's age versus, say, the 1970s, they weren't under the microscope that they are today. They didn't have the high-def replay and a camera at every single inch of the field saying this should have been this and this should have been that. So I understand a little bit there. However, as I think back to this officiating season, I think, were there consistent problems that never got addressed? Yes. And it's the tush-push situation. I do think it got better throughout the season, but it took about 5 weeks for them to be like, yeah, we should call this right. We should make sure that they're lining up offsides or onsides, and we should make sure that they're actually not committing false. It took 5 weeks for them to start figuring that out. So, and even on top of that, there were still almost every single week that we had an extremely game-altering controversial call. That's a consistent problem. We even had more discussion about like replay assist of like, is replay assist helping us or hurting us? That's a problem.
Right.
No, I don't think that this is the best the NFL's ever had for officials. It's not the worst, but it's nowhere near the best.
So if you were to give it a grade here before I launch into my explanation, where would you place the officiating compared to the last like couple of years, or just in general, how would you grade the refs this year on accuracy and avoiding those game-altering calls like they did in the Super Bowl? They both earned really good passing grades from both of us.
Yeah, I would give it a solid C, because I know that in an entire 200 whatever game season, you're gonna make some mistakes here. I get that, but I again look at consistent problems. There were consistent problems. I think I would give them a passing grade, but I think a C. I think like a 75% is the best I could give it, and that's honestly probably me being generous. The reality is they probably earned more of a C minus.
Yeah, you're being generous, because I'm going to launch into my charade now. I think that Roger Goodell is playing politics, and it's frustrating because the biggest problem that so many of us have with the NFL is that they're not transparent about anything. The officials are held to a higher standard and refs are better than they have ever been is just a lie. It's just lying. Like, our eyes are telling it. It harkens back, and I'm going to use a ref call as an example of how I feel about that statement. It reminds me of the Matt LaFleur call against that happened on Thanksgiving, Lions and Packers, where his player clearly committed a false start on 4th down, and they ruled that he got a timeout off. We have video evidence of him not getting the timeout off and smirking about it because he's like, no, I got the timeout off. The video tells us one thing and Roger Goodell tells us another thing. It's been that way for the last couple of years because there's either a disconnect or Roger Goodell refuses to admit that he has a problem. And it's really, really frustrating. And he clearly knows that there's an issue. He's expanding replay assist to other penalties. That's a direct addressing of the problems that the referees have been having the last 2 years. I still remember the Vikings Sam Darnold face mask safety that was completely missed. And so that's what this is aiming to address. The refs have been bad. And as a Lions fan, I can name a bad call that hurt my team in like 11 of our 18 games this year. That's unacceptable. Especially in the fourth quarter. Unacceptable that a team has over half of their games affected by a call. So I'm going to give them a D plus. I can't give them a C, but I do think, like you said, especially in the postseason, I think that they did a really good job of navigating some tough situations. And so they're better than an F than failing. But if it weren't for the NFL postseason, I think that the regular season is where we had a lot of bad ref calls, and they're comfortably in the D range, nearing failure.
Which is honestly probably a good thing for us because our whole marquee segment is crapping on these refs, so they're going to keep us in business for a long time. Do you agree with the idea to make NFL officiating a full-time job? Because all these refs have other jobs, whether it be regulating law firms. I think Craig Ralsted is an athletic director in the Seattle area, unless that's changed in recent years. So all of these have jobs. Should NFL officiating be 100% full-time job?
I mean, absolutely. The NFL is the biggest entertainment company in the world. There's nobody even sniffing them. The fact that they can't pay a handful of ref crews to, dedicate to the role full time and truly refine the rule book and, get consistent. I think that would be the biggest. If the NFL could achieve some level of consistency, there would be less disagreements. Like if pass interference was called the same way every time, and sometimes it sucked, at least it's called the same way every time. The reason is sometimes it sucks and it's called differently all the time. So I think full-time referees would be a step in the right direction of fixing that. But I still think that challenging pass interference was the closest step that the NFL got to addressing bad officiating, and they immediately took it away because the refs hated it. So I don't know. I don't know what you do to fix the ref problem, but full-time officials have to be something you consider.
I absolutely agree. When I'm looking at other major sports leagues, the MLB, full-time umpires, the NBA, full-time umpires, the NHL, full-time referees, the frickin' MLS, Major League Soccer, has full-time refs. In the company that is by far the most popular sport in the United States, and by far the most profitable is as well, does not have full-time refs, is absolutely insane. They absolutely need to do that. Work 7 days a week? No. But during the week, there needs to be a couple recaps, couple point of emphasis meetings, couple trainings throughout the week. Hey, here's what's going on. Here's our point of emphasis in areas where we're strong. It absolutely needs to be a full-time job. And during the off season, there needs to be clinics and clinics and clinics to get it consistent as possible. This absolutely needs to be a full-time gig.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think that it's blasphemous, honestly, that the refs are not full-time in the NFL and they are in the MLS. That's completely ridiculous. But I think that we could go on for that forever. Maybe it's better that they keep them part-time so that we can continue to make videos that get a lot of views on these referees. We're certainly enjoying the early returns from the part-time referees screwing up in key moments.
Imagine that's DPI during the NFL strike of 2013, during the NFL ref strike of 2013, or maybe it was 12. So the replacement refs. Oh man, we would have gone viral if we were around during that time.
I don't know. I mean, you should have started it then. I mean, you were of age to start a podcast. I was just far too young.
Okay, those are 2 years younger, but there is still some Super Bowl questions that we got to talk about.
Right. There were two players that changed the narrative on their entire careers in this game. One of them is Sam Darnold, who will forever be remembered as a Super Bowl champion. But you, on the night of, compared Sam Darnold to Trent Dilfer. And all the way back at the beginning of the season, you had another quarterback comparison that is even more disrespectful. So we're going to cut to that take really quick and then come back and discuss this. Here is that clip from Tyler. And I don't think that he's going to do as well in Seattle. I could be proven wrong. He may have taken the developmental leap to get there. But man, it's tough for me to respect a guy like Sam Darnold going into his like 9th season on one year of productivity, where it's
My
been
thing
up and
with Sam
down.
Darnold, my thing with Sam Darnold is he gives me the same vibes as Chiefs fans, plug your ears, Matt Castle.
Oh,
He did horrible for most of his career, but he had a couple decent years. And it gives me that vibes. I don't trust it. I think Sam Darnold's success last year is a mirage on the horizon.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Matt
So,
Castle, huh?
here's why I think our show is better than a lot of ESPN analysis people. We're going to admit when we're wrong. Comparing him to Matt Castle, I ate crow in that clip. All right, I'm eating crow right now. I'll get that. Now, I think the real question now is, how did Sam Darnold win a Super Bowl? Because I'm not going to say he's elite. I'm not going to go back and be like, he won the Super Bowl, so he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL this year. Because he wasn't. He didn't play that great of a game in the Super Bowl. But yeah, I'll give him credit that I was wrong. He's much better than Matt Castle. I think a Trent Dilfer example might be more on par now, looking back. What do you think about this? How did Sam Darnold put his name as a Super Bowl champion?
So Sam Darnold was drafted 3rd overall by the New York Jets, right? And when he came out of college, he had I think his ceiling was quite high, but he proved that his floor was quite low as well. Sam Darnold in the regular season led quarterbacks in turnovers. And in the Super Bowl, the Seahawks were one of the first teams ever to not turn the ball over a single time in their playoff run. I think they're actually the only team to ever do it. And that's in large part due to Sam Darnold gripping it and ripping it against that Rams defense. So I have to give credit where credit is due. The main complaint that people had about Sam Darnold was he couldn't win the big game. Yeah, you can win 14 regular season games, but you couldn't win the big game. You lost back-to-back in the best season of your career. Well, he just played the best football he's ever played in the playoffs and won the dang Super Bowl. So we have to understand now that maybe there's a lot of variance in the game of Sam Darnold. Maybe he's not as consistent as guys like Mahomes or Allen or Jackson. But guess what? Allen turned the ball over 4 times and lost in the playoffs. Mahomes' team won 6 games and Jackson's missed the playoffs. So we have to understand that maybe the quarterback position isn't as big of a gap as we're all talking about it is. I think Mahomes is closer to regressing to the mean. Josh Allen proves that Mahomes wasn't his kryptonite and he just can't stay consistent enough to win 4 games in a row in the postseason. And I think Jackson was playing injured, but these quarterbacks are not gods anymore. Like, I don't think that you need one of the big 3 to win the Super Bowl. Sam Darnold has clearly proved that wrong. And so I think that we need to put more respect on more of those average quarterbacks that we never put in those big tiers. And maybe we need to rethink our opinions on some of those better high-tier quarterbacks. But what are your thoughts on Sam Darnold?
So I think you hit the head on the nail with the fact that he didn't turn the ball over. That's huge. Josh Allen, like you also mentioned, turned the ball over 4 times and still almost won. If you don't turn the ball over and have a good defense, that's the recipe. Other teams that have won the Super Bowl with maybe not a great quarterback, I think of the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 50. Not saying Peyton Manning's not a good quarterback, but Super Bowl 50 version of Peyton Manning had more interceptions that year than touchdowns that year. Doesn't matter if you have as long as you have Von Miller on that other side of the ball. I think the defensive scheme was instrumental to Seattle's success all year long. I think it was also instrumental to the Patriots' defense, to the Patriots' success all year long as well. And so I think that if you have, it's the old saying, defense wins championships. I think really a more accurate saying is a great defense and a quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over will win championships.
Yeah, I think that.
But I do agree that there's maybe not as much of a gap in the tiered quarterbacks as maybe we once thought there was.
Right. In my I was thinking about this in the car the other day, if your name is not Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, you have had a really, really hard time winning a Super Bowl as a quarterback in the last 20 years. Who are the quarterbacks that have won a Super Bowl? It's Nick Foles, Matthew Stafford, Jalen Hurts, Sam Darnold, and then like Eli Manning twice.
And then you get into the Joe Flacco.
And then Joe Flacco.
Again, great defense, didn't turn the ball over as
Eli
much.
Manning, great defense, great defensive line. The Eagles with Jalen Hurts, really historic defense. So I think that this narrative that you need a top-tier quarterback to win a Super Bowl should die. Because unless you have Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, it's really hard to win multiple Super Bowls with a quarterback that isn't, from outer space, right? People should probably be focusing on the defenses now. And that brings me back to Drake Maye, another quarterback who kind of changed his.
I want to pause you just one
Go
thing.
ahead.
Even with Brady and Mahomes, great defenses. I don't think Brady ever won a Super Bowl with a defense that wasn't top 10 in defense. 2022, when Patrick Mahomes beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl, was one of the Chiefs' best defenses in history. So even those guys need good defenses.
Right. Essentially, yes. So I think a lot of Super Bowl is great, consistent defense, turnover-free football, and of course, luck. And that's exactly what Drake Maye had this past year. The easiest schedule in the last 25 years. Essentially, every game besides games against the Jets and the Bengals were played against coaches who are no longer on their team. And you could argue that Zach Taylor shouldn't be the coach of the Bengals anyway. And Aaron Glenn was also horrible. He's just getting another chance. So the New England Patriots rode a terrible schedule, a great defense, and a quarterback who led the league in completion percentage and didn't turn the ball over to a Super Bowl. They lost in pretty embarrassing fashion, but I think that, they prove what we just said about Darnold and the Seahawks right. It was just Darnold outplayed Maye on that day.
To quote Andy Reid, it was a bad day to have a bad day for Drake Maye. I don't think Drake Maye will be back though.
Really?
There's a big stat about quarterbacks that lose their Super Bowl debut. Zach, since this, I'm just gonna say this century. So the last 26 years, how many times has a quarterback lost their Super Bowl debut and made it back to the Super Bowl? Doesn't matter if they've won or not, just made it back.
This century?
This century, since the year 2000, how many quarterbacks have lost their Super Bowl debut and gotten back to the Super Bowl?
I can't even think of one, if I'm being quite.
There is only one.
It's not Drew Brees.
And it was Jalen. It was not Drew Brees.
Jalen Hurts
won his only Super Bowl.
Right.
It was Jalen Hurts last year. That is the only Super Bowl. That is the only Super Bowl debut losing quarterback that has made it back to the Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo did not make it back. Cam Newton did not make it back. Matt Ryan did not make it back.
Goff hasn't made it back.
The list goes on as well. So Joe Burrow as well. So just kind of statistically speaking, I don't think Drake Maye is going to go back.
Yeah, and here's my counter. I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here because I also thought that Drake Maye played horribly this playoffs. He had one of the worst EPAs for a playoff run in quarterback history, and that's like putting him in Trent Dilfer and late stage Peyton Manning territory. He was worse than those guys in terms, if you contextualize it in the entire run, which is really, really bad territory to be in. But I think that he has a lot of talent, and I think he's on the same level as Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts was a repeat guy. He's semi-mobile, maybe not Lamar mobile, but semi-mobile. He's got great completion percentage, but he struggles reading defenses, maybe throwing over the middle, throwing with timing. There was a quote from mic'd up Julian Love, a safety from Seattle, who said, "Classic young quarterback mistakes. He's waiting for the open guy and then waiting a half second longer to confirm he's open. This is why he's getting sacked and why Seattle was jumping all the routes." So if he can work on his anticipation and he can work on his reads, I think that he has the opportunity to settle right in that top 10 region, but I don't think he's there yet. I think he cruised on an easy schedule on a good defense, and he's got a lot that I need to see improve from him before I put him in that echelon with quarterbacks like even Jalen Hurts, even, like Jared Goff, other guys. I think that I know that he was an MVP finalist this year, but I think we're going to see a different version of Drake Maye next year as he works through some of those problems. The Seahawks played him perfectly. So,
and I really think it depends also on how he reflects on this game. The one guy that made it back, Jalen Hurts, reflected every single time he opened up his phone on that game. If you remember his lock screen, Jalen Hurts' lock screen was him with the red and gold confetti leaving the field. So every single, and you have to keep that fight in you every single day in order to make it back. And I agree. If he settles in, if he reflects on it well, he gets better in those areas, he can. And I hope he does. I don't like the Patriots, but I do like Drake Maye and I do like Mike Vrabel a lot. That I wouldn't mind them waiting a while so the Patriots fans can know what it's like to be bad for a while and then maybe getting one. Wouldn't mind it.
yeah, speaking of Mike Vrabel, I think that we can move on from our quarterback debate and talk about some awards. This is the finale. We're going to recap the season, right? And that includes our award winners. And Mike Vrabel was your coach of the year for the NFL this year. Do you think that he earned this award, or do you think there's another coach potentially that deserved it?
I think he absolutely deserved it. So what we see in the Coach of the Year award, whether it should be this or shouldn't be this is what it is. It's, did a coach expect to suck and then not suck? And that's how you win the award. When people expect your team to suck, but then you don't suck, you win that award. Last year, the Patriots went 4-13. Drake Maye didn't look good. It looked like the Patriots were going back into just the complete opposite of what they've been for the last 20 years. And then all of a sudden, we have the Patriots doing really well, record-wise at least. So, yeah, I don't think there's another guy that could have won it when you think about it like that, because that's the way the award's always been.
I think there are actually two guys that could have won it over Vrabel, and only one of them should have won it over Vrabel. But the two guys I'm referring to are Liam Cohen and Ben Johnson. Both had pretty low expectations for their team. Ben Johnson's Bears finished 4th in the NFC North and have just had monkeys on their back against all of those divisional teams. But beating the Packers in the playoffs, beating the Packers in the regular season to, win the division, Ben Johnson coached a very impressive season, and I think deserved a better look because of strength of schedule. As we've mentioned, the New England Patriots were historically playing against the easiest opponents they possibly could have played against. And Ben Johnson won a division in the NFC, which was proven by the Super Bowl to be a much harder conference this year. The AFC looked completely outmatched when they faced the best of the NFC. And I think that pretty much every NFC team would have made the Patriots look a little silly had they played the Super Bowl. If the Rams played, I think they win. If the Niners play, I think they win. I think if the Eagles or even the Bears play, I think they still beat the Patriots. And so that's why I'm giving it to Ben Johnson, because he battles a much tougher schedule on his way to, a season where he earned a playoff win against a division rival,
I agree. But that actually kind of proves my point a little bit too, is because the fact that he didn't win shows again that it's who's expected to suck and doesn't. The Bears won the offseason Super Bowl last year. The Bears hype train was as full as it's been since the 85 Super Bowl shuffle. The Bears were expected to do very well, and then they did do well. So even though I do agree that Ben Johnson is a better coach than Mike Vrabel in this particular calendar year, the way the award is given out, Mike Vrabel's the guy.
Interesting. Okay. And I see that, and I understand that Mike Vrabel also had like what, 3 more wins than Ben Johnson, 14-win
Mm.
season.
And
So
we had the same type of discussion last year when Dan Campbell didn't win it,
right,
despite his 14-win season. And who did was it
Kevin
Kevin O'Connell that won it?
O'Connell.
Yeah, the Lions were expected to do well, won 14 games, won the division.
15.
Kevin O'Connell, 15 games. You're right. The Vikings were expected to do horrible, didn't do horrible. Kevin O'Connell wins it in a landslide.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one's particularly more egregious because they were both finalists, and Dan Campbell beat the Coach of the Year finalist twice. It's very rare that you get such a straight up 1-to-1 comparison. But like you said,
Sure.
the Coach of the Year award
It's
is who's expected to suck the most and won the most. Just like the MVP is who is the best quarterback in the league, according to the writers.
Yeah.
It's not who was most valuable. And that went to Matt Stafford this year, his first NFL MVP. And what are your thoughts on him? Should he have won it over guys like Drake Maye or even Justin Herbert, who received an a vote this year, a first place vote?
I did see the person. I did see the person who casted the vote, and he explained why, and I can explain that in a moment. But originally, when looking at it, I thought, how does Drake Maye not win it? He had the easiest schedule, yes, but I did not win. And then I actually looked at the stats. Drake Maye had 4,300 yards to Matthew Stafford's 4,700 yards. Drake Maye had 31 passing touchdowns to Matthew Stafford's 46 touchdowns. And then they both had 8 interceptions. The only thing that Drake Maye did better on stat-wise, outside of some rushing attempts, outside of rushing stuff, the only thing that he did better than Stafford on was completion percentage. He had 72% completion to Matthew Stafford's 65. So doing that blind comparison, I actually would have given it to Stafford over Maye still. Especially 46 touchdown passes, 15 more touchdown passes than Drake Maye. He had 15 more touchdown passes with the same interceptions and 400 more yards in the same amount of games. To me, it's Stafford.
Yeah, and you know, would the Rams be the same team without Stafford? And would Drake Maye's Patriots be the same team without him? I think the Patriots are far more likely to win more games than the Rams without Maye. Like if you just place a kind of do the baseball war argument, if you put a replacement level player at quarterback, which team will go further? New England would because of coaching and defense. I think the Rams' heart and soul was Matthew Stafford and his ability to feed those playmakers like Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. So, yeah, I would have given it to Stafford, too. This is one of the instances where we don't disagree. I think Stafford truly earned his first NFL MVP.
And I was actually, when researching for this episode, I was ready to defend Drake Maye. It should have been Maye, and then should have been Maye. Anyway, but then I looked at it and I was like, oh, no, it should not have been Maye. But yeah.
So speaking of another award that caused potentially some controversy, and that's Comeback Player of the Year. And this one is more subjective than MVP. We can't just compare stats. We are comparing things that you had to come back from. And it was also 2 players that play on the opposite side of the ball. Aiden Hutchinson and Christian McCaffrey were the finalists for this award, and CMC ended up taking it home. And I vehemently disagree with this for 2 reasons. The first reason being is that CMC's injury wasn't nearly as gruesome. It was just, a normal like wear and tear injury. I felt like that just kind of lingered. Aiden Hutchinson snapped his leg in half and returned to a 14-sack season and a season where he led the NFL in pressures and posted one of the only 100 pressure seasons per PFF in NFL history. That to me is more impressive than whatever the heck CMC did this year. But I'm curious your thoughts.
I agree with you. I would have given it to Aiden Hutchinson also. And so I'm looking up CMC stats just to see where's the argument to give it to Christian McCaffrey, which which again, on record, I would not have given it to Christian McCaffrey. I'm just trying to figure out why it did. Christian McCaffrey, he had 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns on rushing. And if I had better Wi-Fi, I think I could tell you his passing stuff too.
Yeah, he had
But that's what I've got.
924 yards receiving and 7 touchdowns. And he also had a sub 4 yards per carry. He had 3.9 yards per carry, which I think is important when we're talking about running
total, backs. You said he had 9 what? Receiving?
Nine. So yeah, his scrimmage yards were 2,126 with 17 touchdowns.
It's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty good. I still would have given it to Hutchinson, but that is pretty good. 2,000 scrimmage yards and 17 touchdowns is pretty good.
You know what's funny is McCaffrey played a lot of snaps, but when you look at the most snaps by a defensive player this season, you want to know who had the most snaps coming off of a broken in half leg? Aiden Hutchinson.
Probably Hutch, which is why I still would have given it to Hutchinson. Those stats, as good as they are, doesn't make me change that I would have also gone Hutchinson.
True. But he played 1,000 snaps.
Dominated league.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Coming off a snapped leg, I think that, 1,000 snaps and 100 pressures certainly gives him the edge, in my opinion. But I don't really know. There isn't like a set formula like MVP or Coach of the Year for Comeback Player of the Year. The NFL just kind of chooses. And I think Christian McCaffrey plays for a more popular team. So I think he won it.
Remember last year when the NFL pretty much said that sucking the previous year is not a qualification for Comeback Player of the Year?
Yeah. I mean, as much as we would have loved to see Daniel Jones win it, or like Phillip Rivers, who was retired and came back,
Phillip Rivers could have won it because he
came out of retirement.
Because he quite literally came back.
He did. I do like that that's the one distinction we have is you can't come back from being bad, guys.
That's not what that award is.
No, it's coming back from some adversity. And your own bad play is not adversity. The NFL rules.
I do have another award that wasn't originally on our podcast schedule list, but I do want to point out, and that's Protector of the Year. The first ever Protector of the Year, the offensive lineman of the year, went to Joe Thuney over the guy you've been advocating for all year out of Detroit.
Yeah, this is a hose job, complete hose job, in my opinion. Joe Thuney did not play like a Protector of the Year. He shouldn't have even had a top 5 finish for this award. And I'm going to tell you why. So I'm going to first present Pro Football Focus grades. And we shouldn't trust grades as much as we do play, but I think it's important to understand when there's such a big difference. So Joe Thuney is the 19th best run blocking guard and the first best pass blocking guard. So clearly he did pass blocking. Remember this 88.6 because that's his best grade, right? Clearly really, really good. Penei Sewell had a 96 run blocking grade, which was number 1 in tackles, and he was just outside the top 10 in pass blocking with an 80. Reminder, Joe Thuney's worst category was a 71, and he was nearly outside the top 20. Also, a 95 overall grade for Penei Sewell. This is also the highest run blocking grade in offensive lineman history and for PFF. Nobody's ever had a higher one. And so, okay, if you're going to prioritize pass blocking, even though the grade is actually higher for Sewell, who plays a more important position along the offensive line, fine. Let's compare pressures and sacks allowed. Joe Thuney allowed no sacks. Wonderful. That is actually really impressive. I will give him credit there. But he allowed 22 pressures. Penei Sewell allowed 19 pressures. He also allowed 2 sacks, but his quarterback is the Statue of Liberty. He does not move. So blocking for Caleb Williams and blocking for Jared Goff means that you might allow 1 or 2 more sacks per season. No doubt that Joe Thuney had an impressive year, but is he Protector of the Year? Absolutely not. This is a complete hose job. I'm concerned for your take here, Tyler.
I'll be honest, I did very little research on this. I just wanted to get your take. Because I was kind of like, all year we had kind of covered it a little bit. And yeah, I mean, Sewell was doing very well. And then I just saw out of nowhere that it was Tooney. I was like, I gotta ask Zach about that.
Yeah, I think it's
So I'm just gonna say I'm biased and I like Joe Tooney, so go Joe Tooney. I'm just
and that's fair. And I think this is a
oh
case
my
of
God.
Panay Sewell's team did not make the playoffs. Had the
Sure.
Lions won 14 games and made the playoffs, Sewell is the protector of the year, no question. But because the Lions underperformed, especially in the run game efficiency, they're kind of punishing Sewell for the bad play of the rest of the Lions offensive line, which I don't agree with. If we're going to add best offensive linemen, why not give it to the freak of nature who earned the best run blocking grade in Pro Football Focus history?
I think they're also rewarding Joe Tooney with the like thought and stat that came out earlier that not came out earlier this year, but the it was pointing out that Joe Tooney was part of multiple Super Bowls with the Patriots, and then he left and they went bad. And then he joined the Chiefs, was part of multiple Super with the Chiefs. Then he left and they went bad, and now that he's with the Bears are good. I think that played into some Joe Tooney hype as well for the voters.
And maybe the voters thought that Panay Sewell will get another one, but Joe Tooney, kind of deserves his flowers before he's up for a Hall of Fame eligibility in a few years because I don't think he plays for very much longer. So maybe
Yeah,
that factors into it.
I don't think it, I hope not, because that's not why someone should win an award.
Sure, but I mean, by every metric, he played worse. So I don't
Yes.
understand what metric
Yeah,
they
I
are
agree
using
with you.
actually. So I'm just trying
I
to
agree.
rationalize the irrational, I guess, is what I'm doing, and you can't ever do that,
Mhm.
especially with NFL media. I think that the entire award structure should probably be changed to former players. Like if you've never touched a football in a competitive sense, you probably shouldn't be voting on players to win awards. And actually, what's funny about this argument that I'm making right now is Protector of the Year is voted on by former players. It's the only one that's voted on by former players. The rest of them are just voted on by, the media, right? But this one is actually former offensive linemen. So I don't know what the hell these former offensive linemen saw. But
Interesting.
that will wrap up our awards discussion. We do have one final discussion for you guys, and it's about our two teams. We haven't really talked too much about them because they aren't in the playoffs. So the playoffs have been going on. We haven't really discussed much news besides maybe a few coaching changes. So I wanted to discuss with you, Tyler, about the Chiefs Super Bowl window. Is it still open? And then we'll switch to my team. But I want to know, after a 6-win season, is the Super Bowl window still open? And if so, what on earth do they need to do this offseason to keep it open?
The Super Bowl window has closed and been reopened this season because it is closed with the cap hell that the Chiefs are in and the horrible performance by Mahomes these past couple years, especially this year and this and that. However, we do have Brett Veach still. We've played around in some simulations. It's very easy to kind of create some cap space and make some cuts by cutting Juwan Taylor. We also are attacking the coaching staffs with bringing back Eric Bieniemy. We're bringing back we're bringing in a wide receivers coach that turned, to quote us 2 weeks ago, that turned Julian Edelman from a short white guy to Julian Edelman. That's going to be leading our offense. We're bringing in a new running backs coach as well. Our coaches are top notch this upcoming year. So if we can just create a little bit of cap space, and we can save about, I think, $12 million by cutting Juwan Taylor, which we will do, window's wide open again. As long as Mahomes recovers from his ACL, which is a big if, but that's what it takes to fly through the window. Mahomes heals in his recovery process. Our coaches actually do their jobs for the first time in 3 years, and we create a bit of cap space. Those three things, we're right back in it.
Fair. And here's my take on it, and I'm curious your thoughts. I think that the window is actually firmly closed because of two reasons. Number one, we're seeing how impactful Travis Kelce's chemistry with Patrick Mahomes was. Patrick Mahomes' regression coincides perfectly with the decline of Kelce. Mahomes didn't actually have too big of a fall off when he lost the greatest ball tracker and the fastest man alive in Tyreek Hill. He still won a Super Bowl, right? So the fact that it's so perfectly coinciding with Kelce makes me think that he was a really, really big piece in Mahomes' success. And the second big piece of Mahomes' success is his playmaking ability. And ramping up after a late ACL injury is going to be tough for him. He will not be able to do a lot of the things that he has been able to do mobily early in the season. He will have to ramp up and he'll have to be careful. So I think that unless and one of the big problems with Mahomes this past season was his deep ball. He was off kilter on many of his targets to anyone not named Tyquan Thornton. So he won't have any time in the offseason to develop chemistry with any of the receivers. He will have to rely on his pocket passing ability, which has shown cracks, and he will be once again with a declining Travis Kelce. I think the Chiefs should probably do a roster reset in the next year or two. Just try to figure out how to fill these gaps, make sure that Mahomes is 100% healthy, and then try to get back to one or two bowls. But right now, there is very little chance that this Chiefs team in the current state that it is makes the Super Bowl next year or the year after that.
I think you're putting too much into the Kelce connection. So Mahomes won his first Super Bowl by airing it out. He aired it out to Kelce, of course, but he also aired it out to Hill. His next two Super Bowls came by not airing it out because that coaching staff adjusted to the roster. They're like, hey, we don't have Tyreek Hill and Demarcus Robinson anymore. We can't just sling it and say, screw it, Hill's down somewhere and win. We've got to really establish that short connection. And that's where the connection with Kelce certainly came in handy, but they didn't adjust, but they adjusted to the roster. This year, they didn't adjust to the roster. They kept trying to force it to Kelce because they thought it was his last year, and Kelce didn't do well. They tried to bring in these makeshift wide receivers. Tyquan Thornton worked out very well, but he was certainly meant to just be a replacement of Rice during Rice's suspension. And so we really just kind of had this ragtag team on offense. If we bring in a good coaching staff, which we are, and adjust Mahomes to the roster at hand and not make it this ragtag team, they can do very well with it.
I think that you're missing out on the most important element that the Chiefs need to learn if they're going to get back to the Super Bowl for me, and that's the run game. The run game has been abysmal. The Chiefs' success early on was revolving around guys like Damian Williams, who really elevated the team, or guys like Jerick McKinnon, who were so valuable in the passing game. They haven't had an impact player like that in quite a while, and so bringing in a good running back, potentially even a great running back. There's one that just won the Super Bowl MVP that could be a free agent this year. Or there's a player that you could take at 10 and be really happy about. But I think that the Chiefs need to address their running game, and Andy Reid needs to address his running schemes in order for the Chiefs to adapt to modern NFL, because clearly what they were doing was not working last year.
I agree. And this is, again, more of why I'm so happy that Eric Bieniemy is back. When he, even as just the offensive coordinator, he's got to make sure that run game's well. You mentioned possibly getting Walker in the offseason, and you also hinted at possibly getting Jeremiah Love at pick 10. Both those things are huge. So, the window's definitely there. We just have to hit the formula. But what about Detroit, though? Detroit also struggled this year after having some years of success. What does their window look like?
To me, it has an expiration date, and it's coming, but it's not here just yet. The defense is still young. The offense is still just as explosive. The biggest need is an offensive line help, because the interior was really bad. Center, with the loss of Frank Ragnow, they have not reconciled. I think getting a veteran at that spot is crucial. But if you stay healthy on defense, by week 5, the Lions were down both of their Pro Bowl safeties. If you just get healthy and stay healthy, and maybe if there's one or two injuries, you just can't have an entire position group go down like that. A year ago, it was the defensive line and linebackers. It was the entire front seven. Everybody was down, but the corners were healthy. This year, the corners and safeties were down, but the linebackers and the linemen were healthy. If you just get, injuries once or twice in one or two position groups, you can manage it. And I think that Kelvin Shepherd did a good job managing it, the defensive coordinator, as good of a job as he could when he lost his entire units in some cases. So just the keys for the Lions are address the concerns at O-line and stay healthy on defense, maybe a few key additions. But the draft philosophy has to change for Brad Holmes. Brad Holmes has drafted a few developmental guys, got a little complacent, and I think that and I'm not a big critic of Brad Holmes. As you know, I'm very positive about his job, but I think that it's the time is now to stockpile talent, cheap talent. That's exactly what the Lions need. We don't have time to draft a offensive lineman from British Columbia who will be maybe a good tackle in 3 years. We need him now. And Brad Holmes, if he adjusts his philosophy to reflect that, I think that the Lions window has an opening for the next 3 years, potentially.
I like your takes. You mentioned there's an expiration. What's that expiration?
3 years. If you can't get one in
Why
3
3
years,
years?
It just feels like in 3 years, like Amon-Ra St. Brown will be pushing 30. Jared Goff will be regressing late into his 30s. It just feels like right now, with Jared Goff being 31 and in his prime, coming off the best season of his career, Jahmyr Gibbs in his prime, still with David Montgomery as a backfield pairing. Like, you have these guys, this core, for another 2 to 3 years. And that's partly due to the great extension jobs that Brad Holmes has done. But you can't guarantee in the next 3 years that you're going to draft replacement level talent for those guys. So you need to make do with the core that you have now. And I'm not saying that the Lions can't extend it with quality drafts, but you just can't ever bank on it because injuries happen and bad drafts happen. So make use of the guys that you currently have on roster. There's like 5 All-Pros. That's enough to win a Super Bowl, in my opinion. Just go get lucky and get healthy, essentially. But
and I think you guys can certainly start this year by
easily
fixing that draft situation, that draft strategy, because you guys have the 17th pick. Is that right?
That's right.
So that's not a horrible spot by any means.
I think at 7, if Taylor Decker stays with the team because he's contemplating retirement, if he stays with the team, you draft the best center available and you go all in. If Decker retires, you draft the best tackle available, sign a veteran center, and you make do with that offensive line. Maybe draft an edge in the second round to complement Aiden Hutchinson. I know Al-Quadin Muhammad, opposite of Hutch, had 11 sacks this year. I mean, you can bring him back too and rotate everybody. And just, it's really just O-line and health are the 2 biggest obstacles to the Lions winning the Super Bowl this year. I think the coaching is really good. I like the moves they've made with Petzing and Kafka. I think that Dan Campbell's the right man for the job in Detroit finally after so many years. So, yeah, I agree with you that this year is probably the soonest, but a lot of things have to go right too this year. But maybe 2 years from now is their best window coming up because all those guys are still under contract.
Okay. Now, and you've got the draft capital you've got both the draft capital and the cap space to do it. You're currently positive on the cap space, which is not something that the Chiefs can say. So if you guys clear some stuff up, restructure some contracts, double your capital that way, you guys have the ability to go get those signings that you need to make.
For sure. And I'm optimistic, but cautiously, I think, because we've been burned by injuries so much by the past 2 years. Yeah. But I think that's all for our agenda, right, Tyler? You had nothing else?
Nothing else. That's it for season 1.
This is it, the finale. Thank you guys so much for watching. It was a pleasure to share the 2025 NFL season with you guys, and we cannot wait to bring you what maybe is our favorite time of the NFL, the off season. So stay tuned, subscribe, and make sure you're ready for the draft and free agency coverage in 2 weeks. But take care, and thanks again.
We'll see you in season 2. Appreciate y'all.